If you ask anyone who's working inside the kitchen, they will tell you that 90% of the time you're prepping and 10% is the actual cooking. And during those prep, you're gonna be using one of these. This is a chef's knife. And this probably is my favorite thing in the world. A regular chef's knife have the following parts. There are three main parts. You have the blade of the knife and the handle. On the blade, you have the tip, you have the cutting edge. On the handle, you have the rivets, you have the handle, and you have the tang. This is a full tang. That means that the blade goes all through the handle. Some of the knives are non-full tang. That means that the blade can only go up to here. This one is a 10-inch gyro or a 10-inch chef's knife. And these ones are 8-inch chef's knife. Depending on you and depending on your preference, you may choose the 10-inch or you may choose the 8-inch. Any chef or any cook will tell you that a sharp knife is a safe knife. That means you can cut through anything with ease. Now we're going to stack up your regular gyro like this one to a $2 knife that I got from a Japanese thrift store. This one is a Santoku. It has a regular blade, it's stainless steel, and it feels pretty cheap. Can you use it? Let's find out. When sharpening your knife, you're going to need this. And this is called the whetstone. They come in different flavors. You have your lower grit whetstone, which is around 100 to 800. This is much more intended for removing materials from the blade. And you have 1000 or your medium grit stone, which is intended for sharpening. And you have this one. This one is called a polishing stone, which is around 5,000 to even 20,000. And again, it's intended for polishing and more refined work when it comes to sharpening. On this particular knife, we're going to be using the 400 grit because we want to use a different profile for the cutting edge. It's not too sharp. This is nothing. So what we want to do is establish a new profile and then gradually sharpen it. To do that, you want to position the knife at around 45 degrees to the whetstone. And then you want to position the blade of the knife perpendicular to the whetstone around 90 degrees. The blade of the knife should have at least 12 to 22 degrees to achieve a proper cutting edge. Now, from perpendicular, you want to go half of that, around 45 degrees, and then half of that, around 22.5. So you're almost there. Just move it a bit, And there you go. The key here is consistency. Whenever you're sharpening, you want to have a consistent angle and you want to have a consistent pressure. So you will go edge trailing, put pressure on the knife, and then edge leading, release pressure. Again, edge trailing, pressure, edge leading, no pressure. Now we're going to do this at least 10 times per side and then gradually decrease it from 9 to 8, 7, and so on. So we'll go 10 on each side. Like so. Then go 9, 8, 5, 4. Now once you reach this stage, you're going to notice that it's not even. That is what you call a burr. So basically what happens is, as you sharpen, the blade of the knife will go one way as compared to the other side. This is what you call a burr. And basically, you're going to refine that burr until you have a very consistent edge. So you continue, go 3, 2, and 1. Then you're going to fill that burr. So it's much more on this side. So I'll go one more. Okay, now it's on the other side. Okay, now it's even. Next, you're going to switch to your sharpening grit, your medium grit, and you're going to do the same. 10 per side, 9, 8, 7, and so on. Two, 1. Now once you reach 1, you want to polish the knife. Then check again for the burr. Now this one's good. At this point you can already stop, but for us, we're going to continue to polish the knife. So we're going to switch to the 6000. In this case, you want to continue where you left off. So you're not sharpening anymore. You're just polishing the blade. So you're going to have a much more sharper and refined cutting edge. It looks good enough for me. Piece of paper. It's not sharp yet. I mean, it can cut. For some people that's sharp, but again, it's not as refined as the other knives. To achieve that sharpness, you want to have one of these. This is called a leather strop. You can use a belt or anything that is leather. This one, I just put one of those and then attach it to a styrofoam. Keep it stable. And you want to have a couple of passes just so you can achieve a much more refined blade. So this is what you see in the barber shop, what they use for their blades. Let's try that out. Let's check again for sharpness. Again, it makes a big difference when you properly sharpen your knife. Good to go. Your 88 peso knife is now as sharp as these. Now, as you work, you're going to notice that you just sharpened your knife, but sometimes it goes either more on the right or more on the left. The knife is still sharp, but the blade is not aligned. So to fix that, you want to use one of these. This is called the honing steel. Or a honing rod. This is not intended for sharpening. This is intended for realigning the knife. They come in different sizes. This one's shorter. They come in different materials. This one's made out of ceramic. Some of them are made out of steel, or most of them. And you want to hold the honing steel. Again, this is the guard. You want to put your fingers behind the guard so that when you when you hone the knife, it's not gonna cut your fingers. You want to angle the knife, same as the angle as you use on your sharpening stone. And then from the base or the heel of the knife, you want to pull it like so. Consistent angle. Take your time and make sure that no one's in front of you so that you don't stab them. You can do it that way, or if you're not confident enough, you can just want to pull the knife like so. During mise en place, you want to have everything at arm's reach. Your cutting tools or your knife, peeling tools, container for non-usable waste, container for usable waste, container for unprocessed food, container for processed and ready to be processed food. Also on the counter, you must have your chopping board or your cutting board well mounted on the table. That means you need to have something below your cutting board. That can be an anti-slip mat or a wet towel or a wet tissue, anything that can hold it in place. Whenever you're cutting something, you always want to do the claw grip on your non-dominant hand. 3 fingers in front, 2 fingers at the back. Clawed up. That means the fingers are curled and the knuckles are exposed. The knuckle is always touching the blade of the knife. Whenever you're using the knife, again, talked about the pinch grip, you can either do the rocking motion. That means the blade of the knife never leaves the chopping board. And then you want to push forward and down, and then pull back and up. Forward and down, pull back and up. Again, the blade of the knife is always touching your knuckle, controlling the thickness of the cut. You can also do the chopping motion, up and down. This is much more intended for knives which are flatter. Yeah. And you also have the slice. Slice meaning you want to push forward and down, doing that slicing motion. But compared to the rocking motion, it leaves the board. Chopping and slicing are much more intended for speed, while the rocking motion is much more intended for control. For example, this carrot I cut or I sliced into about 2.5 centimeters, and I'm gonna produce my julienne. The first cut is always 2.5 or whatever's the longest length, and then now I want to slice it thin, around 1 millimeter thin. Very consistent. Always, again, the knuckle is supporting the blade of the knife. As I push, I glide my knife on or in to the vegetable. Again, a sharp knife will make this easier for you. If this is a dull knife, then you're just gonna be producing something that is not very consistent. I'm doing this slowly for you guys to see. You always want to look at the top of the blade, making sure that the knife is always perpendicular to the board. Now, once you have your sheets, don't be tempted to stack them up and start slicing. The julienne is around 2.5 centimeters by 0.1 by 0.1. These are trimmings. You can use this as trimmings or you can slice them. Put them on the trimmings container. Now, once you have your sheets, you want them to be stable. So what you do is you want to slide them like so. This will produce a much more stable setup because you have more surface area on the board. Next, tip of the knife onto the board, never leaves. Let's move this here, like so. And then you want to push down and forward, pull back and up. The knife is pushing my knuckle, and my knuckle is controlling the width or the thickness of my cuts. Okay, let's do this faster. So that is your julienne. These are just basic cuts. We're not gonna go through all the cuts because we're gonna be wasting time. Now, from your julienne, you can produce a cut what we call a brunoise. A brunoise is basically 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter. You already have 2.5 by 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter. So all you have to do now is get that 1 millimeter of dimension. So what you do, stack them up again, do your claw grip. So you don't have to mince. All you have to do is follow the proper cutting procedures, like so. This is way faster than mincing. By the way, mincing goes like this. Yeah? The tip of the knife, again, never leaves the board. And you want to put pressure on the tip of the knife. And then you want to go up and down, mincing. It's very inefficient for finer cuts like this, because it's going to take about a couple of minutes to do this, while it can only take you about 2 minutes just to slice, slide, rock and chop, and then rock and chop again. Only 3 cuts. So that is your brunoise. You can also do this with an onion. Let me take this out. Whenever you're taking out something, you just want to push the chopping board on the side of the table and then just push everything into the container, like so. It's much more faster and it's much more safer. To do this with an onion, you want to peel the onion, like so, but you want to keep the root intact. This is already washed, and it's ready for cutting. Make sure that your chopping board is clean and you want to start. Root of the onion is going to be opposite or away from you, and you want to go very thin slices. Again, claw grip always. You don't want to cut up to the root of the onion. Like so. So you have your first cut, then you want to do your second cut. Then again, you want to do that rocking motion that we talked about earlier. Let's move that over here so you guys can see. Tip of the knife onto the board, never leaves. You want to go up and down. Again with the claw grip. Push it forward and down, pull it back and up. If you have a sharp knife, you're not gonna cry when you're chopping onions, because the more easier it is for the knife to go through the onion, the less cells are you breaking. What happens is, these cells, they produce a lot of these sulfuric compounds that goes into the atmosphere or the air, and it goes to your eye, or goes to your eyes, and that will make you tear up or basically cry. So that's one way of chopping your onions. You can also mince, but again, I do not recommend mincing. I would rather have you guys practice cutting than doing it lazy. Next, you have what we call the chiffonade cut. Chiffonade is mainly intended for leafy vegetables or herbs in this case. These are basil. So what you do is you want to stack them up like so. Put like 5, maybe 7 pieces depending on the size, and then you want to roll that up. And then again, you want to do the rocking motion. These are intended for soups or garnishes, salads, whatnot. Again, you want to have a sharp knife. If you have a dull knife, you're just gonna oxidize the basil. It's gonna turn really dark. Like so. Easy enough. So those are just your basic cuts. It's not all those are not all the cuts, but at least you have an idea on how to maneuver or how to use the knife. Now that you're done using your knife or your knives, you want to keep them somewhere safe. And you want to start with one of these. These are called knife guards, and this will keep the knife from puncturing or stabbing or cutting someone or something. And then you want to keep them in rolls like this. These are very elegant solutions for mobility and storage. So you can keep like 5 to 7 knives in one roll, very compact. Or you can keep them in bags. These are much more for the big boys since you have different pockets, and it can accommodate much more knives as compared to your rolls. Same, you have pockets for the knives. Then just wrap it all up. So I hope that gave you an idea on how to use a knife, how to sharpen the knife, how to maintain the knife, and how to store the knife. At least you can use that and put that in your arsenal as you go along in your kitchen career. Till next time, thank you.